because my eyes look down. Well, anyway.
That's all right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to True Disabled Story. My name is Nico, and I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with parted blonde hair, large blue and brown spectacles, and a short sleeve white button up shirt with pictures of brightly colored dinosaurs on it. I'm seated in front of a blurred out background. You'll see my olive green wall, and further back, an orange wall, which is my kitchen. Like about 25% of Americans and a full 17% of Philadelphians, I'm disabled. Whether we look locally, nationally, or globally, disabled communities are full of dynamic, diverse, and frankly delightful people with their own stories to tell. All we have to do is listen. As many of you know, I was born disabled. I've never really known differently, and I probably will always have the same diagnosis, so I'll always be disabled. I am naturally curious about the life stories and experiences of the disabled people that I come into contact with, whether through friendship, collaboration, whether they're professional colleagues, civic friends, whatever. This is my chance to collect those stories and present them to the world. Today, I'm excited to hear from my new friend Amy. Before I began recording, Amy was telling me about a little bit about her diagnosis story, so she has a lot of information to share, and I can't wait. So let's get into it. Hi, Amy. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm okay now that we had a little bit of trouble getting connected, but now we're connected.
Yes.
So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for telling people's stories. I think it's really important. And from the vantage of a person who was, for lack of a better word, I kind of hated able-bodied and now is considered disabled. Um, I think at a certain point, I feel like I've met kind of in the middle with all of my disabled friends, but I know the reality is definitely different. Like the path to getting here is definitely different. And I always acknowledge that. You know, I became disabled at 37. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I had, until that point, been dancing since the age of 3 and went to, some of you may have heard of the movie Fame about the High School of Performing Arts. It's now LaGuardia. So I went there as a dance major, of all things. And so I was already like dancing on a sort of semi-professional level at that point. And then at 17, I graduated from performing arts and I got a scholarship at Alvin Ailey American Dance Center. So I was getting, professional training. And I left for a year and a half because I got into NYU Tisch. And to make my parents happy and go to college and everything, I did that for a year and a half. But then I auditioned for Alvin Ailey's training company, which at that time was called Alvin Ailey 3. And I got in. And so now I was really a professional I was with the company from 19 to 21. So the last thing that I ever thought would happen is that I would be disabled in a way that would make it difficult for me to walk, let alone, dance. But that's,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's just like the beginning. So let me know if you want me to go forward.
Sure. Amy, you've given me and the audience by proxy a really great intro into your background, and you've largely answered my first question already, which is, what was your path to diagnosis like? Was it something that you were suspecting, or was it kind of out of the blue?
Okay, so to be really clear, it was for me, just wanted to get rid of a scam call. Um, it was really unexpected and
Yeah.
pretty sudden. I first started to have some symptoms, which were later, related back to having MS, tripping and falling, weakness in my legs, feeling fatigued. I think that's a really major factor for anyone with any kind of MS. Sometimes people ask me, well, is your MS the same as this one's MS. I think that fatigue is a universal symptom. I actually know that it is. And just to fast forward and like bring the story in focus, I went from dancing to acting to deciding that I wanted to go back to school for social work. So I was actually in my first year of social work school. And that's when all of a sudden I started to have these symptoms. I was 36, so I didn't go back to school till later. I had done my BA in dance and then gone back. And I just could not get out of bed. The That was like in January of 2001, and I was diagnosed in, I believe I just told Nico my anniversary of some sort, which would be the 28th year of my diagnosis, which would be July 9th, 1997. So it was literally like 6 months that I suddenly got this life-changing diagnosis. I could not, and the interesting thing is I went to a chiropractor because I'd always had problems with my back when I was dancing, and I was told I had scoliosis. So she was actually the first one to look at what I was presenting and say, I think we should send you for an EEG and an EKG. And I swear, I said, why? Do you think I have like MS or something? I didn't even know what I was saying. I know I had no idea what MS was exactly. I knew multiple sclerosis, but I didn't even know why I was saying this. It was like somehow it was like the worst thing I could possibly think of.
Yeah,
So that was, yeah. And
that's
and then can I just share this? So
sure.
then I get home, and about a day later, I get a call from the doctor who reviewed the EKG, and he said, and I swear I could not make this up, he said, "Hello, Miss Meisner. It's Dr. blah 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 blah. You have MS. Have a nice day." That was it. I was, yeah. I just sat there like a stone. I had no idea what that meant and how life-changing it would be. So, yeah, that's how I got the news.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
I'm so sorry that they didn't give you more support than that.
no, nothing.
That that's as you say, remarkably life-altering news delivered very suddenly. And then again, as you say, in a very short time frame, your entire life has changed.
Yes. And I know that I'm not the only one that's gotten that kind of news, even maybe not this earth-changing, earth-shattering, but, news that's really gonna change your life. I know other people that have told me how, you know, unsupportive their doctors were, and absolutely no bedside manner, to use an old-fashioned word. But
Yeah.
fortunately, and I say this very fortunately, my mother, both my late mother and my late sister, I have unfortunately lost them both, were both nurses. So they immediately were like doing the research and trying to figure out what my next best road would be. So the person that they kind of found initially was Dr. Herbert, who I'm not sure if he's with us anymore, but he was connected to the Hospital for Joint Disease. And he had, you know, some expertise in the field of multiple sclerosis. So that was where I kind of started. But tell me if you want me to go to that first hospitalization.
Thank you. Yeah. So you're not the first guest I've talked to for this project who has told me about how um, the medical care has kind of dropped them, and then to fill that gap, family steps in, right? I'm very happy that your mother and sister were there for you and could provide that support. I shudder to think what would have happened if you didn't have that support, and I shudder to think about people with MS that might not have nurses in their immediate family.
Right.
That's a very rare stroke of luck. I'll say that. But yeah, let's
Interestingly, yeah, interestingly, I also, one of my cousins was married to a doctor who had seen me like slightly before that time. And she later said, she didn't say anything to me, but apparently she had said something to my mom that
okay.
she suspected. Um, Partially also my age. I should make this clear. Like MS is often diagnosed between 20 and 40. It's most common. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't give my pronouns, she, her. I'm a white female. And actually, MS seems to be most common not only in white women between the ages of 20 and 40, but also of Eastern European background, which I am. My ancestry is Ashkenazi, Jewish, Russian, Ukrainian, Austrian, Hungarian, all that. And apparently, we seem to have this bucket list of diagnoses, and one of them is multiple sclerosis. See, nobody told me this, I mean, I just didn't know. But yeah, I might have not as have been quite as surprised. But she was smart and she knew. But she didn't want to say anything to me because she didn't want to get me upset in case she was
Understandable.
wrong. Yeah. But I am very grateful for having medical professionals. I also had social workers. Uh, I myself had become a social worker. So I had social worker friends and also family. So, I did have a lot of support, I have to say. And this practice was good for me, as a first place to get diagnosed. The thing, though, that I have to say about MS, and one of the things that they do that I really never want to do again, is take steroids. They tend to give you steroids to get you back, quote unquote, back on your feet, which it does that, but it also makes you hyper and crazy and headachy, and you want to eat any and everything that you can think of. Like everyone who said they were coming to visit me, I was like, I normally eat fairly healthfully. I was like, I need Oreo cookies, I need potato chips, yeah, because it's like all you can think about is what junk you want to eat. So, yeah. So I will never, no matter how bad I feel, I will not take steroids again. But that's often like the front line that they do.
Sure.
So, yeah, he also put me on some uh he did put me on a medication called the Copaxone. That was one of the self-injection medications, and that actually turned out to be pretty effective. But all that said, I had to take leave of absence from school. I had a part-time job that I had to step aside from, and I just had to deal with this illness. That's like all I did. I would say it was a good 8 months that all my life revolved around was taking care of this illness. And again, God bless my mother who stepped up to help me with my rent. At that point, I was separated from my now ex-husband, so I was living alone and kind of enjoying living alone. It was like the first time in my grown-up life, that I hadn't lived with my parents or roommates or whatever. And then, that started in like 94, and then this is 97. So it really wasn't that much time to enjoy myself before life changed, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Amy, thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. So here you are, you've taken 8 months of your life to kind of reorient yourself and
Right.
relearn life with multiple sclerosis. As you move forward after that 8 months, what were those first steps in your new life like? What was the impact of your diagnosis? We've talked
Well,
about, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I really want to say that if I had to have a diagnosis in terms of great organizations, the multiple sclerosis organization is there. They're very good. They have a lot of programs. They've had some budget cuts in the last couple of years, but at the point when I first got diagnosed, I was walking with a cane. I want to make
Mhm.
that really clear. For 7 years, I walked with a cane. And it was risky. It was always risky. I was stubborn. I have to admit, I was being stubborn. I had a manual hospital chair at home that I would only use like if someone was driving me somewhere, we could fold up the chair and put it in the car. And I don't know at which point I got a walker, but it's like I wouldn't go near it. I just
Mhm.
wouldn't touch it. And the thought of a wheelchair was, sure, it was like something I knew was a possibility, but somehow I never thought I would have to go there. And then so after like 7 years, during all this time, during that 7 years, I started taking yoga with the MS Society, which was like, I recommend it for anyone doing anything. It doesn't matter whether you have MS or whatever you have, it's just a really good thing to, get out of your head and breathe and relax and stretch and do all that. And I also met other people with MS who pretty much had similar stories. Like they had worked, they had never thought this would happen to them, and it was really life changing. Also, in terms of relationships, I wasn't the only person who was divorced or separated or starting life again, and that's a whole other thing, dating with a disability. I'm sure you've covered that. Some, somewhat, yeah. I eventually, yeah, well, farther down the line, met a lovely gentleman who I'm still involved with. But he met me in my wheelchair, which was good in a way because that I sometimes I forget like he never saw me walk, he never knew me any other way. So this is this is what you get, you know. But yeah, in the course of that time, I also found a practice that was a little bit more beneficial for me than joint disease. St. Luke's Roosevelt has an MS care center, a whole separate center, which is now I live within like I now say scooting distance because I use a wheelchair. Um, I used to, from the point when I first started, I was dragging myself from Queens. After I split up with my husband, I moved uptown, and then my mom had an apartment in Queens. And that was really good for me because I was close to mom. I'm sure you can imagine. And that was also because mom was a nurse and she got it, And we also started going to the gym together. So I'm pretty stubborn, like as far as having been a physical person, I just wasn't good, no matter how, I hate to use the word sick, but no matter how advanced my situation got, I still kept trying to find ways to use my body and to work out. Not always, not gonna lie, there were times when I had really bad relapses and I just couldn't get out of bed. And that was different, very different for me because I was a person that was always, up and on the go. I do want to say that after that 8-month period, I did eventually go back to school and finish school and get my MSW, which is good, which I'm very proud of at Hunter College, which is a great school. I was working at an organization which some of your listeners may know called ICS, Independence Care System. And I was actually the first visibly disabled person that they hired who had a master's in social work. So I'm proud of that. Now, ironically, I'm a member. I'm no longer, yes, I no longer work there. I am a member. Although at the point when I became staff, I think I was still considered a member also. So um, I really had to take a pause again when I started to trip and fall. And tell me if you want me to stop for a minute, because this is big transition to being a wheelchair user.
Sure, go ahead.
Keep going. Okay, so now I'm 44, and I've been working for 3 years at ICS. I was my previous background, actually, I had done work without more than my Bachelor of Arts degree, but I had worked with the homeless mentally ill because my sister, who's a psychiatric nurse, had also worked with that population. So I had a really good like background with that. And ICS actually worked hand in hand with a shelter called Barrier Free Living, which is one of the only shelters, I think, in the country. I think they've had some, influence to create more, but that actually catered to people who were homeless and physically disabled. So I was a good match at that point. And yeah, and I was shocked also at some of those people's stories. These are people that had jobs. There was a guy who had worked he was like a CEO at American Express, and he'd become homeless due to drug use and then disabled and, and homeless, so you just never know. And I was always grateful to have a home. I really was. And I am today, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But so yeah, so when I realized that I couldn't do that anymore, that kind of launched me into getting more involved in just, the disability world and nonprofits, which I know you know. Um, and I think that's where we interconnect and know a lot of some of the same people. And yeah, I started to tell Nico before we went on that I became involved with the New York Disability Pride Parade. And that was a very cathartic thing because I had an opportunity to hire like all of my talented, amazing friends to do this parade, which was really the first of its kind. Some people argue with me. There had been a disability march in New York, and there were parades in Philadelphia and Chicago. So, but we were like the first New York Disability Pride Parade. So I was really proud of that. So that just became like a whole, like all-consuming thing that I did for a couple of years, but I'll never regret it. I finally I performed in 2018, and so then I kind of had to bow out. But we had some years, obviously, because of the pandemic, where we didn't, have a parade. But they're trying again to come back, and I don't know, what I'll ever do, but I'm really proud of it, and I'm really, really am totally impressed with some of the people that I met. I had never met people like this before. I mean, people, it didn't matter that they were disabled or able, but I don't, they were just dynamic, incredible people that had such intelligence and will and passion. I've never met people with such passion before. And sometimes I think to myself, wait a minute, I thought I was a passionate person in my life, but I don't know. I'm not so sure. In some ways, now when I do something, I feel like it takes that much more effort. So maybe I'm more passionate about it. I don't know. So where are we? Did I get back to, go ahead, ask me a
You
question.
you did, Amy. You answered really ably the impact that your MS diagnosis had on your life and how it shaped your decisions moving forward. Um, you said that as a result of your diagnosis, you did take some time to reorient yourself, but you did get your MSW, and that's fantastic. You
I'll never regret
helped,
it.
exactly. You helped other disabled people. You became ultimately um, a program beneficiary of a program that you used to help run, and that's totally fine. That's why the program is there. And then you also told me kind of your evolving role within the Disability Pride Parade movement up in New York, which is also really well considered. I mean, there's always multiple ways to pitch in to something like that. And I'm really glad that you get to stay involved. Returning to performing in 2018, was there new challenges for you? Was there anything unexpected that came up?
Well, actually, what came up in 2016
Uh-huh.
was a woman named Heidi Latsky, who actually is now a neighbor, where I live in Manhattan Plaza, which I'll get to that before we close, just to say that I'm very fortunate now to be living in a building that does take into account one's income in relation to one's rent. And there
Oh,
are
okay,
many,
yes.
yeah. So I have like a weird history here. I lived here previously as a performer, and then I got in later as a person who was living in the neighborhood in a building with one elevator that broke all the time. So after I lived in Queens, I moved back to this neighborhood really with the eye of getting back in here. And there was no guarantee. It was a lottery. I had to wait for the list to open again, but again, I had this strong will that this is going to happen. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I'm supposed to be back there. So anyway, um, so in 2016, I started working with a woman named Heidi Lasky. She herself is, interestingly, an able-bodied performer, but she recently, and I'm saying this because she's been very public about it, a brain tumor, which is really interesting because she had some heart problems and then she had a brain tumor. These are all like sort of hereditary things that, again, she was surprised when they hit her. She's in my age group. She and I were both dancers at the same time in like the late 80s, 90s with various dance companies. And, but we kind of ran in the same circles, but didn't exactly know each other. And then someone said, oh, Heidi has a group where she's working with disabled and non-disabled performers. You should go to one of her workshops. So her workshops are kind of like auditions, although she doesn't want you to think that you're auditioning because, she just wants you to like be yourself and whatever. So I went to a workshop and before I knew it, she started to ask me to perform with her. And in about a year or so, she asked me to be a part of her regular dance company, which is very exciting because we were a very busy nonprofit. We were a 501c3, and we got money from the city to appear at a lot of public places like Federal Plaza, like museums, Central Park. Uh, God, uh, I can't even think. Like if you can think of a public place, we performed there. It was, it's one of the yeah. We really came to the community, which was really exciting. So, and I personally also officiated or facilitated some of our installations, particularly that we did in Queens, because I was living in Queens for a while. And I did a whole really beautiful installation, if I may say myself, in front of the World Unisphere in Flushing Meadow Park. And then I went on with another person who coincidentally also went to performing arts, but we didn't know each other at that time. She was a music major, again, small world. You run into people again. And her daughter had worked with Heidi, and that's how we reconnected. And we helped orchestrate a bunch of installations around the city. So we did a bunch of for Harlem Week and at El Barrio and Mount Sinai Hospital. So now I'm remembering all the ones. Yeah, a lot of them. So it was really wonderful because again, it brought me back into doing something. It kind of drew on a lot of the social work stuff of organizing because I was a group work social work major. So it was like, oh yeah, no, I remember that skill. I learned that, now I'm going to actually use it for something that makes sense. And again, I like that you said that I drew in other people from the disability community, and I did. And, I didn't think about it that way, but it's true. And, but in saying that, they influenced me so much because I hate the word inspired. I know we all hate that word, but I have to say I was, because there were people like yourself, you say you've been disabled your whole life. I don't know what that's like. And these people were just incredible to me. It's like nothing had really stopped them from pursuing their goals. They just decided, this is what I do and I'm going to keep doing it. I really skipped the period where I got back into acting a bit. I'm a member of a Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, and I started to do some work uh, as a disabled actor, which was also something that I didn't really expect to be doing again. And I'm actually still doing that. I worked on a commercial not too long ago and a TV series. which they called me to come back. This is, a lot of it's just background work, but I'm grateful. So like, it's not bad, especially a commercial, not bad money. It's not even, you don't even have to be like saying anything or doing anything. So again, I feel what's really important for me now is just showing up. I feel like if I just show up and someone goes, "Oh yeah, look, there's that woman in a wheelchair back there," because I know I do that when I see things, you know. And it's so nice to see. Like I just saw a show off Broadway called All of Me. I don't know if you heard about that. It was about a romance between two wheelchair users, and Kyra Sedgwick played the mother of the female who was dealing with her daughter's like new sense of independence. Now, both of these people, they are real wheelchair users, but they do actually speak. But they used those soundboards where they type in what they want to say and then it's voiced for them. So that was really interesting technology for the audience to see. And, a very real view. They even talk about, the challenges of two people who are disabled who want to get married or live together and what that might do to people's benefits. To hear that from like a in a Broadway show or off Broadway show, I thought that was very powerful. And I went with my partner who is an able-bodied person who as I told you, I met, when I was already using my wheelchair. And so he only knows me this way. So, which I think is good. I mean, there were like no other expectations. I do walk at home with a walker. I do. And that ability, I really try to do that as much as possible. And I don't usually use my chair at home. But if I have to, I've been sick and I've had to use a manual chair, I use it, you know.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you have the chair option there if you need it. I do relate to not wanting to, always use the chair or any medical assistance. I'm kind of that way myself. Um, I really appreciate you telling me about this off-Broadway production. Losing SSI benefits or SSDI benefits as a result of marriage is a huge barrier for disabled people. It's a
Mhm.
barrier that I myself faced kind of at the conclusion of my first big romance, where my college girlfriend and I ultimately did not get married because of what would have happened to my benefits. And also, we were young, stupid college kids and eventually fell out. So it happens. And the benefits loss was something that I had to continue to navigate until I found full-time work, probably in my late 20s. I'm 36 now,
Oh, you look so
which,
young.
thank you,
I
I
guess
appreciate that.
I'm sure you're used to hearing that. Yeah.
I am not used to hearing that, but I really appreciate that. Yeah. I also, think about what you say in terms of getting back out there, wanting to be in the room, wanting to represent disability in that way, just to make sure that, you know, people keep disabled people in mind and
Right.
consider um, other people's needs that might not necessarily be their own needs. I
Right.
see you in that definitely.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, it's really so right now I actually have been working a little bit on this, this TV show, which they're really weirdly like they do not want you to mention the name of the project, you know. Um, right. But you'll see it eventually, and I don't know, maybe you'll see me. There's like a lot of it shot in a hospital. I will just say that. So hence, at least they're making an attempt to use real people in, in a real wheelchair. Not always, not always. Sometimes I'm not enough, so they put a person in a manual chair and like push them around. But yeah, I'm glad that they're enabling me to be on set. And I just wanted to add that with Heidi Latsky, we actually, in July of 2019, we performed up at City College, and we had people from the government of Armenia, a place I like had heard of, but and they actually were so impressed that they invited us to go to Armenia to a big arts festival. Uh, thank God, pre-pandemic. This is July 2019, and 19 of us, 17 dancers, and actually, well, my partner came because I was very clear that I could not travel without him. That was it. And he ended up, helping out and doing like really the only video that we had done of the whole performance. And then we had a lovely gentleman who had been a dancer, who was our company manager. And yeah, all of us to Armenia, which was quite an experience. Now this is another little thing I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to. So we flew through Moscow, and my wheelchair and another person's wheelchair got lost in the transfer from Moscow to Armenia. So we show up to Armenia without our wheelchairs. Yeah. Now, my partner had brought my walker with me. So at least I could like walk around. We had to wait. Oh, there were only two flights between Moscow and Armenia in like a 12-hour period or something like that. It was ridiculous. We had to wait to get our wheelchairs, back. And the other person really, he has CP, and he really could not walk without at all. So he had to get a chair, which they gave him a chair in the airport. And then at one point they said, no, 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 we need the chair back. And he had to just sit and wait. Sit, yeah. My partner helped him go to the restroom or whatever, but it was ridiculous. But it was quite an experience. Also, it was an interesting country because it's a very old country. So there were little parts of it that you could tell they tried to make accessible, but other parts where it was just impossible, like the hotel, their version of like ADA compliance was made America look really good. Yeah, it was kind of difficult. Yeah. They had like in the shower like a big stool like that you couldn't even really get yeah, without like major assistance. So it was an adventure. I'm glad I did it. Made me appreciate America to some extent, you know, in terms
Okay.
of what I mean, I think about, other countries. I've had some contact with people like in India and Africa, like just online, people that I connected with who told me that, they don't have the kind of chair that I have. They've done some wheelchair performing, but in like a basically like a hospital type chair. Like they don't even, you know, like what we dream of is, more accessibility. They would like any accessibility. So
The
I
basics,
do,
huh?
yeah. Yeah. So we not that we should be totally grateful because we know that that's not the case. And I'm currently getting fitted for a new wheelchair finally, and that's been like a real process, which I'm sure anyone else who's listening knows that that's, I'm going to Rusk Institute now, which is pretty good. I have to say, I waited a really long time to get in to be seen by them. And I'm excited but nervous about getting a new chair because it's going to have new gadgets on it. And I have to, adjust to it. But it was a really long process to get finally seen by them and approved by them. But I think I'm getting my new chair in July.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Another example of where your stubbornness really pays off.
Yes. Uh,
Amy, thank you so much. My third question, as we switch to kind of the back end of our time together, um, you've had a long life handling MS and navigating this disability as you advance in age and go through different careers and different life situations. If you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self about how to navigate life with MS? Or even if you could advise someone who just got their MS diagnosis, what would you say?
it's hard to say because if someone said it to me, I don't think I could listen. You
Okay.
know, just to know that it's not over till it's over. As long as you're still breathing, you still have life. And as long as you can think, which, another issue because sometimes with MS and some other illnesses, you get like brain fog. It's very hard to focus. So just take like 1 second at a time. Try not to plan too far in ahead. Understand that when you have something like MS, it's really difficult to make major long-term plans. You have to back up a little bit. It's just you're not the you that you used to be, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that can come out in you. Like for me, I feel like activism. Oh, I even forgot to mention that I do write now um, for a magazine called Dance Enthusiast, and I write about other artists with disabilities. So it's another way to connect with my community. So you need to know that you have a community out there. It's not always easy to locate them. I think now with the internet, because Lord knows I was not really doing that, at the beginning. And I think now it's very helpful. There are groups. Like I said, I have to say that the MS Society has more groups than a lot of others. At one point, I was on a chat line with people with MS who were artists and writers, and we started to want to meet each other, and we actually met eventually. So, just know you have a community out there because when you first get that diagnosis, you feel like you are the only one. In that moment, it really, really feels that way. And I don't think there's anything I can say to make anyone feel otherwise, other than to know that that is not the end. It's not the end. And I also want to say that I'm 64, so I'm really old. I could be all of your grandmothers at this point. So yeah, no, it's been a long life and it's interesting. I also want to say just yesterday, I participated in an Alvin Ailey, what did we call it? Alvin Ailey Dance for Active Aging. I hate the title, but it was for seniors in my building. And we participated in an 11-week course. And as I said, I studied and danced with Alvin Ailey. So I was adapting some of the choreography that I had done standing up to being in my chair. I was the only one using a wheelchair, but there were people that had to sit for parts of the class and had walkers and other things, canes, and just people with other challenges, let's call it, that were doing the class. And we had a whole presentation yesterday for our city council member, Eric Botcher, in the hope that he would give us more money to do this kind of thing. So um, in that, I just want to, say that I'm very fortunate to live in Manhattan Plaza. It's a very progressive building that takes all of these things into account. And that I can't promise everyone. It's hard to find. It is. But I am very grateful.
That's really good advice, Amy. And I love this story that you told me about yesterday performing an Alvin Ailey dance piece. And you choreographed as a wheelchair user the dance moves that you were performing decades prior as someone who was not a wheelchair user. That's like a really great, well, not great, but it sounds like a very significant kind of full
It,
circle
it
type of thing.
was. I felt like crying. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
when it was over. I kind of felt like crying, but
Mhm.
again, people came up to me and said, "Oh my God, you did that in your wheelchair. Like I can do that in my wheelchair." And I was like, "Yeah, go for it." We'll hopefully we'll have other, sequences. And again, what is that? Just showing up.
That's right. Amy, thank you so much. I never
Thank
really
you.
know what to expect when I invite people to come speak with me for this project. But you've told me a story that truly did move me. I am someone who loves stories. I was a history major in college, and hearing your story, I consider myself very lucky. My last and final question is one that I ask all
Oh,
my interviewees, regardless of
uh-oh.
project. and that is, I want to give you some time that you and I, as disabled people, so rarely get, and that is free time to brag about yourself. What cool things have you accomplished? What cool things do you have coming up? If you want to build community, where can people find you online? This is just your chance to really promote yourself and be your own cheerleader. So go for it.
Well, I feel like I kind of did
Okay,
already. I'm
sure.
pretty horrible with social media. My email, which I don't mind sharing, is a little wonky. My mother's name was Florence and she had great coleslaw. So it's Flo, F as in Frank, Low, S as in Sam, LAW at yahoo.com. I know I have a hanger or whatever they call it on Instagram, but I never use it. So yeah, that's really the best way to reach me. On Facebook, I use my still using my married name, even though I'm divorced. It's Amy Meisner Threet. The last name is Threet. So yeah, that's the best way to reach me. So yeah, no, I mean, I mentioned that I have like 2 articles I need to get back to writing for. It's called danceenthusiast.com, and you can Google that, find it online. I have a few articles in there already under, I believe it's just my maiden name, which is Amy Meisner. And yeah, so look for me in some upcoming, it's a streaming show. I'm not allowed to say what it is,
Of
but
course.
it takes place in a hospital. There is somebody pretty famous in it, which is why we're not supposed to say anything. So I probably said too much. Anyway, but yeah, so there, whatever. But oh, the commercial I worked on though was kind of fun, and I think I am allowed to talk about that. It was an Amazon Prime Video commercial with Megan the Stallion
Okay.
and her dog. It was we were, did you ever see the movie Best in Show? Where
I
like,
have, yes,
yeah,
once long
so
ago with my parents.
it's hysterical. Well, yeah, so Megan's coming out with her French bulldog, and we're just the audience clapping and whatever, and cheering her on and whatever. So it was really a fun day, and yeah, good way to make a living, and that was like a good fun short day. TV and film days, just if anyone's curious, are like 12 to 14 hours. Yeah.
That's what I
And
hear.
you get paid like half as much as you make for a commercial. But either way, it's lovely. In fact, I was just called to do a matching shot for the hospital scenes that I did for that other thing. So I'm going to be
Okay.
working on it again. And I'm not sure what's happening with Heidi. We are hoping to go back into rehearsal of some sort. She, oh, I forgot. A year ago, like, yeah, we performed at Yale University, which is really very exciting. To like be in the dressing room where Meryl Streep was, and yeah, so because it's like the Yale dressing room, it's the backstage area, and that's for everyone. So that was pretty exciting, and we had both like a sort of pedestrian audience, but then we had more of a collegiate audience as well. So that was really interesting. And in that particular piece, we had moments where we did all like our own choreography
Sure.
completely. So Heidi really gives us that opportunity, which is again another wonderful opportunity for me to like dig into my brain. And part of the choreography was to express like how we were feeling. See, I'm kind of the minute I start thinking about dance, I start doing it. That was, one of my movements was like kind of brushing away like what how I'm feeling and just being able to move forward with it. So that, and we might have another, dance workshop here. There's always stuff going on here in the building, though. It's great, performances, workshops, whatever. And
Maybe that, oh,
I hope to continue with my relationship is now, we met in 2006. So it's a long relationship. And yes, there are many reasons why we don't live together, some of it, the reasons that, everyone can think of, but there are some other ones too. Like he's dealing with an aging parent up in the Bronx, and I'm here. But we just try to be supportive of each other, and I'm very grateful. He's definitely someone I know I can count on.
That's wonderful. Amy Meisner is a dancer and all-around performer who lives in New York. Amy has told me a tale about staying connected with her creative energies, even as she deals with multiple sclerosis. She's told me about her career in activism and the connection she's made in New York, and I consider myself remarkably lucky to hear this story. Amy,
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much. You've really made my day. Wherever you go next, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you, Nico. It's so nice to meet you finally, and I'm so glad we connected. Thank you.
Absolutely. Of course.